Welcome back, everybody. It is February 2nd of 2019, and this is episode 2 of What is on My Desk. So it's been about 30 days, give or take, about a month since the last video was posted. So I've got quite a bit done in that past 30 days, so there'll be quite a bit going on in this video. I completed the 4 models that I had going on from the last video, so you'll see a wrap-up of those videos when they were completed. I started 4 new kits for German aircraft for the D-Day to VE Day group build on the Aircraft Resource Center forums. So you're going to kind of see an intro into the 4 kits that I started. And then I also purchased 2 new kits. So you will get a quick overview of those 2 kits I purchased and what I kind of have planned for those. And then we'll jump back and we are going to see a current look at what I have done, where I am, what I have on the desk, what's the current build level of those 4 German kits. So, my name is Sean, and as always, this is Sean's Aviation. Okay, everybody, welcome to a bit of a time travel episode here. I'm videotaping this one roughly the middle of January. So getting this segment out of the way now, just to keep my desk a little uncluttered. So, starting off, we will begin with the one I still have on my desk. I hadn't finished it from last night. So it is the Hobby Boss Avenger. So as I had said in the last video, this is the Hobby Boss TBF-1C, the earlier Grumman-built version of the Avenger, as opposed to the later General Motors built TBM. Did have a little bit of some fit issues that I ran into. To begin with, I found the, zoom in here a little bit so you get a bit of a better view. The fuselage fit, the cockpit was very tight fit into the fuselage, so getting the fuselage halves together with a clean seam took a little bit of effort as well. Adding the canopy bits, it was pretty hard to get all these all lined up in the proper lineup. The turret I didn't install until after painting, which means this piece had to be left off until after painting. And it really wasn't designed that way, so it took a little bit of extra effort to get those all put in. Overall, I mean, the kit is extremely detailed, very fine riveting detail, lots and lots of detail in the cockpit, but everything's a really tight fit. And while that seems like it'd be good for a model, what you end up running into are issues where if you misalign anything in the interior construction, it starts to multiply itself along, and by the time you get to the end, what started off as a very small gap turned into a very large gap, or makes it very difficult to line everything in. So you don't get a lot of wiggle room at the end of the kit. And I like when it's detailed enough, but you still get a little bit of wiggle room to make sure it fits. The other side of that coin is if you are going to make everything super detailed and super tight fit, everything should have a very positive way of locating, so that when you install 2 pieces together, there is no chance of leaving a misalignment. In which case, then, at the very end, everything fits. This kit has tons of detail, but lots of pieces don't have good gluing surfaces. There's a bulkhead in here where it's just sort of a tab that fits into an indent, and there's lots of extra wiggle room. So it can be, you know, fractions of an inch higher or lower side to side, and you don't know where it needs to be until it's all assembled, but you can't assemble it to the end. The combing over the instrument panel, there's absolutely zero alignment tabs on that piece. You don't have any positive fit other than just kind of popping it in there and letting the glue hold it in place. So those are the kind of issues where down the line you can run into some pretty serious alignment issues. The wings. The outer wing, so this kit comes with the option to have the wings folded. So to put them straight, the halves that make the inner wings, I'll go on this side, the halves that make the inner wings and the halves that make the outer wings don't form a perfect seam. There's no spar that runs through and holds the two together. So this lip here, let's get this moved over so you can see it. You'll see there's this little bit of a lip along the top. That overlaps and has a bit of gluing surface. But along the leading edge, it's just a butt joint. So it takes a little bit of effort. You kind of have to sit there, hold it, time, effort, just to make sure everything sits the way you want it and everything goes together the way you want it. So it takes a little bit more effort than it should have if the if the model was designed with some better sort of locating tabs and everything had a little bit more of a positive fit. Other than that, as you guys can clearly see, this kit turns out looking amazing. Lots of detail. Overall, it looks great. I love the look of it. I can't wait to get it up on the shelf with the rest of my... I actually have a couple of other Fleet Air Arm aircraft. I have another Avenger in I think I showed it to you in the last video with the two-tone gray over sky. This particular aircraft is the two-tone gray over white for the Atlantic scheme. So it's an Avenger Mark 1. And it flew with number 711 Squadron based out of England in 1945. And you can see it's got the black along the leading edges and the nose and the forward cockpit and whatnot. I think I mentioned in the last video, helped the pilot during night operations. So as you can see, again, decals were from Third Group. Great decals. They settled in nicely. A lot of the detail, the riveting detail when you weathered it shows through. Very happy with how they turned out. And if I give the aircraft just a little bit of a spin over, I'll hold it from the model, not the base. Give you guys a view of the bottom. Let's see if I can get it. There you go. It's got the rockets on the sides, and can't really see it. The torpedo there in the bomb bay. So that is the Avenger, Hobby Boss Avenger. Very happy with it. Anybody who's looking to get a Hobby Boss Avenger, highly recommend it. Good kit. I would, if you want to use the classic monogram scale, I would call it a level 3. It takes a little bit of effort, knowledge, and skill to put it together, so you kind of need to know what you're doing to make it work right. But if you know what you're doing and you got a bit of model skill, definitely one I would recommend. No issues on that. I'm going to go get this on the shelf. I'll be right back with the next model. So, next up, the Edward Lysander. Again, just to reference back to the previous kit, if I had to put a scale on it, I would call a difficulty. I would call it a level 3. Very finicky to build. I had lots of issues with the cockpit, getting it lined up. I'll post a couple of my stills pictures that I've taken from the website. I'll throw them up in here so you can understand what I'm talking about. The internal framework of the cockpit builds up like a cage with all the interior details sandwiched in the cage, and then that cage gets sandwiched inside the fuselage. And while it looks very detailed, it is a little finicky putting together, getting it all lined up. So some of the internal structure is misaligned in my kit. And then I think I mentioned in the last video with the canopy, the windscreen, clear pieces, the side panels. Pick this up without breaking it here. These side windows, they have more curve fore and aft and more curve top to bottom than the rest of the fuselage. So it bows out on the bottom and it doesn't line up. If you get it to line up at the bottom, it doesn't line up at the top. If you get it line up at the top, it's mismatched at the bottom. And same fore to aft. If you get it to line up the front, the back doesn't fit. So there's a lot of little kind of misalignment issues in the cockpit, so you kind of have to find a happy middle ground and live with it. I am very happy with how this turned out. Once you get it together, it looks good. The upper structure, almost like a wing spire, there's 2 tabs on either side that the wings connect to that runs across the top of the cockpit underneath the clear canopy top. I actually had to break mine off and re-glue it at the proper angle, because when all of the internals were completed and glued into the fuselage, it was on the wrong angle. But once it's glued together and the canopies are all put into place, it creates a very strong bond. I can pick it up from a wingtip and the whole model stays together, which I'm very surprised with. I did not expect that it would hold itself together that well, considering how finicky and flimsy that internal structure looked as I was constructing it. I'm sure the wing struts have a good play, just as they would have in the actual airframe, to hold it all together. I would, as I said, recommend some skill if you ever want to build this one. It comes with photo etch in the box, and a lot of the details. This little, I'm not even sure what it is, to tell you the truth. It's some sort of a little post on the nose section. Not sure if you guys can see that up there, just behind the propeller. There's a little photo etch post that sticks up. I'm not sure if it's some sort of aiming device for guns or a wind direction device for when they're doing their takeoffs and landings like a helicopter has. Not entirely sure. So that's photo etch. A number of the details on the rear cabin guns are details. Flipping it over to the bottom, a lot of the flap actuators, tie downs, they are all photo etch. This antenna, I'll flip it around this side, make it a little easier to see. This antenna running down the bottom of the rear fuselage is a wire. You're supposed to make it out of styrene. I didn't have the right size styrene. You have to provide that, build it, cut it yourself. So it's a bit of skill involved, but overall I am extremely happy with how this turns out. I kind of wished it came with some of the weapons that are supposed to go on the bottom of the little stub wings here that come off of the wheel pants. Kind of wish I had some weapons to hang off of that, but overall, great looking aircraft. Vintage Wings of Canada has a Lysander, so I've spent a lot of time around an airworthy Lysander, and this looks the part. It looks just like a Lysander sitting, in the hangar. So I'm very happy with the shape and the overall finish of it. Took the decals well, straight out of the box. Edward decals, amazing. It took to the sides the ribbed sort of fabric look to the side of the fuselage. Decal settled in nicely onto that. And it's painted up as an aircraft from number 309 Squadron, based in Scotland in 1942. So very, very happy with that. So I'll put that guy back and we'll get the next one. So my camera battery just died. I was able to get a bit of a charge into it, and we will continue this. Hopefully I have enough to get this video done. As I was saying, the Airfix Defiant, definitely more a simpler build. I would even say a beginner would be able to tackle this aircraft. The only real trouble part is the turret. There's a couple of smaller parts in here. The construction is a little bit on the fiddly side. If you're going to display it open, as I have here, it takes a little bit more skill to get that, especially with the painting of the turret, getting it all together. If you're gonna, I guess if you're a beginner, you're gonna hand brush most of it anyway, so it wouldn't be a problem. Airbrushing, you kind of have to leave it out. As you saw in my last video, I had the placeholder turret, which I still have, kicking around here somewhere. It gives you one piece for the turret if it's closed, and then the 3 separate pieces for the turret if it's going to be open. So when I painted, I just used the closed turret as a temporary fill to hold the gap or fill the space while I painted, and then I had the separate pieces which I put in at the end. So yeah, definitely an easier build, lots of detail, relatively inexpensive. Airfix has made a real good comeback in the past few years. Highly, highly recommend their kits if you can find their older ones don't have quite the same detail. Rivets the size of your hand, if you had scaled them up kind of deal, but this is definitely one of the better kits. Flipping it over, you can see I got the gear down. It comes with the antennas for underneath. This rear antenna was retractable, so it just slides into a hole. So if you build it with the gear up, you can glue it, so it's out at its full height. If the gear up, you just slide it in to kind of whatever height you want. So you can choose the length of that particular one. You get the little door here on the radiator. You get the step, which can be up or down. The main gear, not sure if I had included, if that was in it in the last video. If it was, I'm sorry for repeating this. If it wasn't, I'll put up a few of the pictures I took during the building progress. Excuse me. The main landing gear doors, they come molded like this for the open. The landing gear down option, the two doors are molded already in their two kind of, they slide over each other. So they're molded in that piece with the separate inner door. If you plan to build the kit with the gear retracted, it actually gives you an insert of all the doors in the right place, and they just pop into the opening. I actually use these when I painted. So I was able to paint the aluminum interior and then pop these in place, and I painted the sky bottom, and it acted as a perfect mask for the wheel wells. I didn't have to worry about filling the wheel wells and masking them off. I just did it all using the kit supplied retracted doors. So that's a huge benefit. It also looks clean. You don't have to cut the doors apart and get the overlap right and the scale thickness right, whatever. There's the structure on the inside of this. You can see the little ribs to give it the structure when you put the gear doors up. So great little, this one little piece of plastic did not take much for Airfix to engineer, or the cost to include these in the kit are like fractions of a penny per kit. But from a builder's perspective, massive improvement, and I greatly appreciate this kind of engineering in a kit. Definitely makes building a kit a lot easier. Same goes kind of for the canopy section here. There's one where you have the entire kind of sort of canopy section as one, or it also comes with the multiple pieces here, so you can build the model with the canopy open. So the markings you see on this aircraft here are from a 264 squadron from the RAF, based in England in July of 1940. So just at the beginning of the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain started in July of 1940, went through the summer and ended in early September. Battle of Britain weekend is September. The weekend that lands as close to September 15th as possible. September 15th is sort of officially Battle of Britain Day, and then we always have a Battle of Britain weekend celebrations landing on that weekend closest to that day. And September 15th is considered the day the RAF officially won the Battle of Britain. Big battle that day, decimated the Luftwaffe, and that was sort of the end of the aerial attacks over England. So September was the end. This was, as you would see, the aircraft in July. Not too long after July of 1940, the Defiants were withdrawn from frontline service. They just could not compete with the modern fighters. This turret design, sort of England's idea of, they had a massed attack formality. You could have large formations of aircraft all flying in a mass of weapons. All your weapons were concentrated in a large formation. So in this idea, the pilot flying in formation could focus solely on flying in formation. He didn't have to worry about where the enemy was because the turret could take care of the enemy. That was the thinking of the RAF. It's also why you would see the RAF early on fly in formations of 3. It didn't work so well in combat. You usually had, later on they moved on to the Finger 4, so 4 aircraft flying in a Finger 4 formation like this. In a combat situation, they'd break off and you'd have 2 groups of 2, lead and a wingman. Lead would go the attack, wingman would protect the lead. So formation Finger 4, into combat, break off into 2 groups of 2, go into fight. The British flew in the Vic, which were, sort of 3 aircraft in a Vic. And the idea was all 3 would fly in together and attack, but your 2 wingmen were focused solely on flying in formation with the lead, and they weren't able to look for enemies or shoot down enemies because they were so intent on flying in formation. So they very quickly, during the Battle of Britain, re-adopted new procedures. So the new procedures did not fit with the Defiant. They did not have forward-firing guns. They were heavy. They weren't maneuverable. They weren't very fast. And they could not hold up against the modern Luftwaffe fighters, the 109s and whatnot. So very quickly withdrawn from service. Many of them were turned into trainers and were used for gunnery training later in the war. So yeah, again, Airfix Defiant, highly recommend the new Airfix kits. Easy builds. I mean, this took me a while because I had 4 on the go, but I mean, if you really wanted to sit down, you could polish these out in a couple of days. Easy, fun, they look the part, and there's a lot of really rare aircraft that they're coming out with. The Sea Fury, the Defiant, they're just releasing a 1/48 scale Bolingbroke, early with the glass nose Bolingbroke. So great kits, highly recommend them. If you're into that kind of thing, look at Airfix. Okay. The final one for this section of built kits is my Italeri Hawker Typhoon. The Hawker Typhoon was the follow-on for the Hawker Hurricane. You can sort of see some similarities with the Hurricane if you kind of know your history and you know a lot about the aircraft. You can see a lot of similarities. The tail of the Typhoon was very similar to the shape of the tail in the Hurricane. You can't see it because it has the metal sides of the fuselage, but the internal construction of the forward fuselage, this whole cockpit section, is the same sort of tube and frame construction you would see in the Hawker Hurricane, whereas it's got a more modern tubular fuselage, like a monocoque fuselage attached to the rear, but inside the cockpit. I'll throw up a picture of me when I was building the cockpit I took. You can see the cockpit is very similar to what a Hurricane would look like, with that almost a World War I type construction of the internal fuselage. So it's sort of that hybrid between the Hurricane and what the next aircraft would be. You can really see a progression from like the Hawker Hart biplane to the Hawker Hurricane. Very similar, a lot of similarities there. Then the Hurricane to the Typhoon, you can see a lot of similarities there. Then the Typhoon to the Tempest, you can see similarities. But if you look from the Tempest to, say, the Hurricane, you don't see any similarities. But the Typhoon is that middle ground that connects the two aircraft. It also has a very, very thick wing. Similar to the Hurricane, the Tempest had a very thin wing. So you can start to see how things evolve and change as they went. This aircraft, this model, I would put on the easier side of construction. A beginner would have no issue putting this together. The fuselage insert, I'll throw a picture up of this as well. Earlier versions had a different cockpit, so there's an insert here that you can put in to change the cockpit opening with the different canopies. That takes a bit of effort to put together. You kind of got to fiddle with it to ensure that they fit properly. But once you get that, the rest of it just falls together. Nice and easy, good detail, no real complaints. The landing gear goes in nice and sturdy once you get the bracings in there. The rockets are nice and firm. The construction, they fit well nice together. Solid gluing points, no real issue with alignment or anything. Very happy with it. I'm also very happy with just how it turned out. I think between the 4 that I built, I would say the Lysander and this one are near the top. But this one just went together really easy. I used kit decals. They did not react that well to the decal setting solutions. So I had a few issues of some of the decals melting in some places due to how harsh the setting solution was. I tried to hide it as much as I could, so I don't know if you guys can even see anything. If you do, please don't point it out. Just keep it amongst yourselves. But yeah, so it went together fairly well, no complaints. I like the way it looks. I have never actually built a Typhoon before. It's one of the first models I remember my dad building as a kid. He built the old monogram one, and he still has it. He's had it for easily, I want to say, 25, 30 years. He's had it sitting on his shelf. So fond memories of a Typhoon model. Never built one. Glad I finally got one done. And for those who are interested, the paint scheme I have done is of an aircraft based with 123 Squadron RAF based in Torney Island on June 6, 1944. This Italeri kit was the D-Day kit, so every marking option there are four different marking options in this kit, and every one of them is marked up exactly as the aircraft would have been on D-Day. Hence the invasion stripes and whatnot. For those of you who don't happen to know, these black and white stripes painted on the aircraft were invasion stripes. They were painted, the order went out in late May, early June of 1944 to paint any aircraft taking part on operations over Europe to be painted up with these markings. And it was just a very quick and easy way for anybody on the ground to identify that that aircraft is an Allied aircraft. The amount of air power sent over France and Germany leading up to and just after the D-Day invasions was enormous. And a lot of people would be on edge, and a lot of people, especially ground troops, would be in France, would be trigger happy, and they would not necessarily be able to quickly tell whether that aircraft overhead was, say, a Typhoon going in to attack German panzers, or, say, a Focke-Wulf 190 who's coming over to attack them. So these invasion stripes were put on as a very quick, easy identification early on, or during D-Day itself, top and bottom and all the way around the fuselage. A little later on, the tops were taken out of the order, so you'll see somewhere along the middle of the fuselage will just be the bottoms, and the bottom of the wings, the tops would have been either repainted if it was an aircraft that was in service over D-Day, or would not have been painted for a newer aircraft entering the theater. You still see those later on in different invasions. The Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa in 1943, had yellow bands. The Suez Canal crisis in the 1950s, British aircraft had yellow and black bands put on them to identify which aircraft were which. So it's a very common tactic to paint stripes on an aircraft to help quickly identify which nation they belong to. So that is my Hawker Typhoon, the last of the 4 kits that I have completed. Started these roughly 6 months ago, so now that I have children, I'm averaging, I usually build 3 or 4 kits at once. I'm averaging 6 months or so to finish the kits, so I'm looking at somewhere between 6 to 8 kits a year. I used to be able to do 15 kits a year back in the day when I had more free time. So that is that. Moving on to the next 4 kits I'm going to build. I am taking part in a group build on the Aircraft Resource Center. A great website. I'll include the link below in the description, so you guys can go to Aircraft Resource Center. Great modeling reference site. Not just aircraft anymore. They've updated the site. They've got cars. They've got figures. I think they have figures. Don't quote me on figures. At least cars, tanks, and ships, all in different sections, plus aircraft, so it's broken down into different sections depending on what you're interested in. Great modeling resource. If people have questions on how to do techniques or anything, go to that site. Lots of good answers, lots of good references. People post their build logs. Lots of great information on there. They also do group builds. They're usually a 6-month window. They pick a topic. Everybody builds aircraft that fits within that theme. So right now, being the 75th anniversary of D-Day, coming up here in June of 2019, between January 1st and July 1st of 2019, is a D-Day to VE Day, Victory in Europe. So as I was saying, the group build, anything between D-Day, June 6th of 1944, and VE Day, which I believe is May 5th of 1945. I could have the date wrong, but I believe it's May of 1945. Anything that participated in the ETO, aircraft, tanks, ships, anything that falls within those parameters, eligible for the group build. Unfortunately, the Typhoon that you have just seen was already under construction, so it wasn't eligible, and the only other aircraft I have in the stash that fits within those parameters was a Trumpeter C-47 Skytrain, DC-3, whatever you want to call it, which I am planning to build up as a D-Day paratroop aircraft. However, I do not have room on my shelf for something that large, so I went down another route, and that was to go to German aircraft. And I had a number of German aircraft that fit within those parameters, and luckily, as you will see, I have 3 variants of the same airplane. All that would fall within those parameters, and I figured it'd be nice to have sort of a family tree of this aircraft type. So I'll go through the list of what I got, and I will start with this. It is Tamiya's 1/48 scale Focke-Wulf 190A, and it's an A8, I believe. A8R2. I don't know enough about Luftwaffe aircraft to understand what the R2 is. I know they basically are designated similar to the American style, where a Focke-Wulf 190A, B, C, D, and then there's sub-variants. So within that Focke-Wulf 190A, there's like an A2, an A5, an A6, an A8, what have you, and the number denotes a minor variant within the A model. So this is an A8. I don't know what the R2 means. So I apologize if anybody out there does and is like yelling at me right now, but I don't know what the R2 stands for. I could always see if it includes... so apparently the A8R2 is designed as a bomber interceptor. So there you go. Not too sure what the R8 officially stands for. I don't understand German, but that is what this version is. It is a bomber interceptor version. So this kit, along with another one you're going to see, I acquired through a roundabout means. I worked for a commercial roofing company. One of the warehouses we were working on had a roof. The company had to purchase, had a leak in the roof. And of course it had a roof, it was doing roofing. Had a leak in the roof during a rainstorm, and the company had to purchase most of the damaged items as part of the contract, and it included some plastic models, mostly tanks. I was the only one at the company that knew anything about this, so I went through, inventoried. Some of them were complete write-offs, you know, broken plastic, missing pieces, what have you. Some of them were good. Some of them still had boxes and whatnot, so I sold off a few of the kits that had boxes still that were okay to sell and people would be interested in. Made a bit of money for them on the side. I did it all on my own time. So at the end of it all, a couple of these kits I bought at well below market value. And at the very end of it all, a couple of the tank models, I kind of got free reign to pick one or two for free as a thank you for going out of my way to get this done. So this was one of those kits I got. So the instructions are a little damaged. It did not have any decals. The decals were complete write-offs. So I'm using some aftermarket decals. So the instructions, the internal plastic bits are still inside of their plastic bags, so I know everything is there. Canopy parts, it comes with a pilot, probably not going to use the pilot at all. So everything I need to build the A8 is in the Ziploc bag. As for decals, I purchased, let's see if I can find it in the mass of instructions I have here. So I purchased a aftermarket sheet Eagle Strike decals. I did that a few years ago, knowing that I needed decals. And luckily, one of the options on that sheet was this guy at the top, White 12. And it served on the Western Front post D-Day and was actually discovered by Allied troops at the end of the war, which means it was still in service right up till the end of the war. So you can see here, it's this top one. So it's got a standard sort of two-tone gray over the light blue color on the bottom, and then it's overstreaked with this dark green. Really cool scheme. I like those oddball schemes. So that's the one I'm going to do. Fits in with the aircraft type perfectly, being an A8. So that is what I'm going to do with that. Kind of cool. It's got a little bit of a yellow cowling there, so a bit of a color punch, which I like. I like those, like I said, bright colors, interesting schemes, things that are a little different from normal. So that is my Focke-Wulf A8. Next up, another one of my warehouse finds. This is the Focke-Wulf D9, the Dora 9. It has, I can pull out the other sprue there so you can see at the top there. That's a standard Focke-Wulf, let's get some glare off this here. That's a standard Focke-Wulf fuselage with the standard Focke-Wulf length wings, the 190 early one. The Dora 9 had a stretched fuselage with an inline engine with the standard sized wings. So it has a longer fuselage, inline engine, designed for high altitude intercept. The radial engine was not good at high altitudes, so it had issues intercepting the American bombers. So the Dora 9 had an inline engine, allowed it to get to the higher altitudes to intercept the American bombers. That kit was one of the very interesting kits. I wish I had managed to salvage the decals from that. They were just too far gone. The decals for that one included the... I did not take it out. Anyways, you can maybe see in the picture there, it had a red lower fuselage with white stripes on the wings, assigned to JV-44, which was the elite sort of intercept squadron from late in the war. So the would have been kind of cool, but unfortunately the decals were shot, so I had to go out and buy aftermarket decals for that as well. And these ones are from Eagle Strike, I want to say. No, Eagle Strike was the other one. I believe these are, you know what, to tell you the truth, I can't remember what company. Superscale, maybe? Anyways, so this one includes options for Focke-Wulf Dora 9s. So I'm going to be building, it's a black and white instructions, but this guy here, it's got a red, white, red tail band with the name Christie painted on the forward fuselage, which, you know, one of those, it's an interesting paint scheme, so I figured I'd do that. It's white letters with a red underline, and it's similar to the previous one. It's a green and brown on the top with that sky blue on the bottom. So that is my Focke-Wulf 190 Dora 9. So we've got the A8, and then we've got the Dora 9. Now, to finish off the family, I have the Focke-Wulf TA 152. This particular kit is the Italeri kit. Got that a few years ago at the hobby shop here in Ottawa. This was a late war higher altitude version of the Focke-Wulf 190. It has very lengthened fuselage and extended wings. So the fuselage was slightly longer than the Dora 9. So I'll pull out the Dora 9 bits again. So you can see there's a standard Dora 9 fuselage length, and that is the TA 152 fuselage. So you can see the tail's quite a bit longer, a bit of a stretch going on in there to give it the longer fuselage to balance out the center of gravity, because while that is the wingspan of a Focke-Wulf 190A, D, the whole series, the wings of the TA 152 significantly longer. So much longer wingspan, give it that ability to get up to the higher altitudes. Because of the extra weight, they had to stretch the fuselage to balance all the weight out. So I figured having the A8, the Dora 9, and the TA 152 all sitting side by side on the shelf, you can kind of see the progression of the Focke-Wulf from early in the war. Focke-Wulf came out in late, I want to say 41, maybe 42. I want to say mid 41 is when the Focke-Wulf 190A first showed up. So from that to the TA 152, which didn't enter service, only like 80 of them were built right at the end of the war. We're talking like February, March of 45 when those TA 152s entered service. So to see a family of those three aircraft, really cool, hence why I chose these three for the build. It came with decals. Not sure yet. I'm kind of on the fence about whether I'm going to use the kit decals. That other super scale sheet for the Dora 9 also included TA 152 decals. I'm thinking I might go with this guy here at the bottom, a yellow 4. It looks kind of cool because it's got a yellow band and then red on the cowling and on the rudder. So again, bit of a punch of color. I'm going to have to wait a little bit and see what I end up choosing to do. We'll see. I'm not entirely sure yet. That decision will be made a little later in the game. Finally, fourth kit for this group build, Tamiya's 1/48 scale HE 162 Salamander. Don't see a lot of these built, don't see a lot of these in the world. There's probably only about 5 or 6 maybe. Again, my numbers could be wrong. Double check the interweb if you're not sure. Not a lot of these left in the world. Built at the end of the war. Built out of plywood. Rushed into construction. Most of them were built by slave labor, so the construction quality was very poor. Many of them were actually ruined. There's a word I'm trying to think of, and I can't think of it right now. But the manufacturer is actually... So the word I was thinking of was sabotage. Many of the factory workers, as I said, most of whom were slave laborers, sabotaged many of the components on these airframes to effectively render them unairworthy. So only a few of them flew during the war. I don't know if any saw combat. If they did, maybe a handful. I would suspect none actually saw any real combat during the war. A few, many, were acquired by the victors, the British, the Americans, the Canadians. I'm not sure if any went to like Australia or New Zealand. I'm assuming maybe a few. I believe Russia got their hands on a few of them too. A number were test flown. Most of the ones who were test flown actually broke up in flight due to the structural issues with them. Bad glues, bad woods, and the sabotage. By all accounts, it was an okay aircraft. It had good performance, good maneuverability, would have made a decent gun platform. Took a little bit to get used to the flying, apparently. Even experienced pilots said they were took a bit to get used to them. The idea for these would have been flown by like 16-year-olds. You know, they would have learned to fly in gliders and quickly thrown into these to help shoot down Allied bombers. I don't think the plan would have worked out very well, but if they had gone to production a little earlier in the war, probably would have seen some better outcomes. This will be the fourth aircraft I build for the D-Day group build on Aircraft Resource Center. As I said, I will have a link to that down below in the description of the video. If anybody's interested in model building or anything like that, like I said, take a look at that site. Highly recommended. So the paint scheme I'm going to do, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go with the option here that's on the box art. Probably what I'm going to end up doing. You can see it here. It's a two-tone green, a dark green and a light green. Not entirely sure why the wings are painted different colors. Every version has one wing light and one wing dark. Don't know why that was done. But dark green, light green with that same German light blue bottom. And this one has the black and white nose with the red arrow on the nose. I am lucky enough here in Ottawa at the Canada Aviation and Space Museum. We have an original one of these. I think I have a picture of it. I'll throw it into the video here so you can take a look at it. It's unrestored. It's basically on display the same way it looked when it was initially captured at the end of World War II. Really cool aircraft. Gonna be cool to get it built. This particular model you can kind of see here in the picture. It has a separate engine stand, so you can build up. You can build up the engine stand. It's actually the first step of the instructions. And then here, quite a detailed engine construction. A lot of the little accessory bits are all included on that. And it comes with a sort of a quick change feature. So you can have the model built and be able to quickly, for example, take off the closed cowling off of pins with rubber grommets and install the completed engine with the open cowlings. So you can swap back and forth between a closed engine and an open engine. I think I'm going to build this one with the open engine just permanently installed. Gear down, cockpit open, really show off the detail that's included in this kit. When I do have kits that have a lot of included detail like this, I do try to show off as much of the detail as I can. I'll only build an aircraft wheels up when the detail is really poor. So I'm trying to hide the fact that it doesn't have a lot of detail in it. So, you know, gear canopy closed, gear up, hide the lack of detail. Or if I have multiples of the same aircraft. When I get around to showing you some of my older models that I have built here in a later video, going through some of my previous builds, I have a shelf of 6 Mustangs, P-51 Mustangs. And I have a shelf of 7 Spitfires, all on the same shelf. So a number of them are on stands. I've also got a shelf with 5 P-40 Warhawks, or Kitty Hawks, or Warhawks, Kitty Hawks, Tomahawks, depending on what model and what country used them. So in those cases, I have a couple on stands, just so I can pack more of the same type on the same shelf. Similar to when I do the Focke-Wulf 190s, the A8 and the Dora 9 will probably be wheels down, and the TA-152 will be wheels up on a stand above it. I can kind of keep the same aircraft together and show off in a closely packed group the different models of that aircraft. So those are the 4 aircraft: the A8, the Dora 9, the TA-152, and my HE-119. Those are the 4 kits I will be building next. So hopefully when this jumps back to 2 weeks in the future, it'll be a second for you, but 2 weeks for my time. You'll get to see some of my completed progress. The cockpit's built up, maybe painted. We'll see where I get in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. But before we go, I'm going to get the next 2 kits that I got and show those off to you so I can get them put away in my closet so that they don't take up space out here. Both of these kits I purchased off of Facebook Marketplace, of all places. So the first one, I don't know whether all of the parts are included in these. I took a quick look at them the other day when I got them. So I don't know what's included. I'm hoping all the parts are here. If they're not, I'm hoping I have enough in my spares bin so I can make whatever pieces are missing. So this is AMT's F7F-2 Tiger Cat. So it's Grumman's later aircraft. They had the Wildcat, the Hellcat, the Bearcat. This is the Tiger Cat. Just missed the end of World War II. Served a lot in the Korean War. Twin-engined fighter. By Korea, it was used almost exclusively as a night fighter because the jets came in more for the day fighter. So this is AMT's F7F. The other one I got, I'll go through them here in a second. The other one I got is Testors. P51. Testors is like the model glue, model paint company. They had a line of models for a while. So this is their P51 Mustang. Quality isn't the greatest. I'll go through this in a second. I have a long-term plan for this. That's why I bought it. We'll talk about that in a second. I got both of these together for $25. The P51 was marked for 10, and this was marked for 15. I almost bought one of these online a few, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months ago on the Aircraft Resource Center buy and sell. The guy wanted $25 for it. It came with an extra decal sheet, but $25 was a decent price I found, so I was going to actually I was going to buy it. Just shipping from Texas was brutal, so I decided not to buy it. For $10 for a 148th P51, you cannot pass that up, especially with the reason I bought this. I'll go over that in a second. F7F Tiger Cat. So as you can clearly see, it doesn't have a bottom of a box. It's just kind of 2 Ziploc bags tucked together, kind of holding everything in. It's ripping here. So I took a quick look. All the parts themselves are inside of a Ziploc bag inside of this because the inner sort of sprue bags have been broken. So there are a couple of parts kind of kicking around inside the box. So I'm hoping everything's here. We'll see. So it comes with 2 different paint schemes. The all blue, usual what you see in the US Navy, the overall gloss dark blue. This one would have been an April 8th of 1945. So actually it was in service just before the end of World War II. I don't think they saw combat. But according to this, as seen during carrier qualifications on April 8th of 1945 aboard the USS Antietam. Antietam? A-N-T-I-E-T-A-M. Antietam? Never heard of it before. Anyways, so they did kind of get into service before the end of World War II. The other scheme it includes is an all-yellow scheme for the Naval Test Center in 1948. As I said, I could have got one of these with a second decal sheet included. That decal sheet from Caracal Decals. Great guy, making some great decal sheets. Very looking forward to getting a hold of that. He has some of the later schemes. I'm probably going to do this one in an all-black night fighter. So all black. Gloss or flat, I'm not sure. It depends on what the instructions say. They found gloss black was better for night operations than flat black. So all black with some red markings. Probably do it wheels up. I don't know what the wheel wells look like on this or how sturdy everything is. I'll have to wait until I start, getting ready to build this thing and dig around on it and see how I feel. Decent kit. AMT was pretty good detail. A lot of the P40s I have. Like I said, I included also Down in the description, I'll have a link to my website, a link to my model's website, and a link to ARC. So if you want to see any of this stuff, you can jump in and see it. I have a few of AMT's P40 kits I've built before. They go together well. They've got decent detail. I have no complaints with AMT. So hopefully the detail on this will be good enough that I can possibly build it wheels down. I would like to have built it with folded wingtips. I like to fold the wingtips on my Navy aircraft. It gives me more shelf space. Pack more models into the same shelf space. Just the reason why they would have done folding wings, just like the aircraft carriers. Plus, being a Navy aircraft, if I'm going to have it wheels down, I find they look cool with the wings folded. Really shows off sort of their naval heritage and what the aircraft was capable of. So we'll see what I end up doing with this. Don't know when I'm going to get to it. I got 10 to 15 years, maybe even more, worth of kits sitting in the closet that I have to get to, and I have very little shelf space. So we'll see when I get to building this. Who knows? Maybe I'll trade it or sell it down the line for something else, because you see, that's the other thing with ARC. You tend to see a lot of people looking for specific kits that they can't find, you know. And I only paid $15 for this. So if somebody's trying to trade kits and he has a kit that I want more than I want this, and the deal is right, I'll trade kits. I've done that before. I've traded a few kits to people. You never know what you're going to find or what you're going to work out to. I've given kits away. They've done Christmas raffles in ARC, and I've just unloaded some older kits that I didn't want. Or I did a group build. I moderated the Canada 150 group build in ARC last summer. For the Canada, last summer or the year before? Ooh, geez, 2 summers ago, 2017. For the Canada 150 group build to celebrate Canada's 150th birthday. So I actually got rid of a bunch of my older Canadian stuff, some kits, some decals, stuff that I would never use, that I had duplicates of. And I just gave stuff away as prizes. So you never know what's going to end up with stuff. At $15 for a kit with no shipping included, you know, that's a good candidate down the road for a possible trade or a gift. We'll see how that goes. Okay, last new kit I've acquired. This is, as I said, Tester's 1/48 scale P51. If you want to look at P51s on the market in 1/48, there's a lot of companies. Revell Monogram is sort of the oldie goodie one. It's been around forever. Decent quality, decent price. You can pick them up at, you know, hobby shops for $12, $13, $14. Not bad prices at all. Well, Monogram has gone out of business recently. They went bankrupt. I heard Revell of Germany acquired a lot of their molds and stuff, so we'll see if those ever get repopped again. Time will tell. Tamiya's got great 1/48 P51s. Hasegawa's got great P51s. And Airfix just released a new 1/48 scale P51. All of those, you're probably looking at the $25 to $30. I'm thinking Canadian dollars. You know, so for all those of you out and about in the world, you'll have to do some conversions there. $25 to $30 Canadian, give or take, for the Hasegawa, the Tamiya, or the new Airfix one. Hobby Boss did one. Priced okay, good detail. You can usually find those for about $20 US, you know, $15 to $20 US out in the market. So there's tons and tons of 1/48 scale P51s on the market. However, for what I want to do, there isn't many options. And I'll show you what I have here. I bought these a few years ago from Leading Edge Decals here in Canada. And what they were was, I have 2 of these big 3.5 or 4 inch binders, and they hold all of my decals. And it's just easy. I've been organized by aircraft type, and it's easy to find what I need, yada yada yada. So what I was able to get my hands on, I'm glad I bought them when I did, because they very, very quickly sold out, which is what I figured they would do, which is why I snapped them up as soon as I heard about them. Okay, I don't know where the... Interesting. I'm missing the header picture for one of these. Anyways, they are packs of RCAF P51 Mustang decals. So you see this guy here, it has 4 different squadron options. So 403, 442, 443, as well as winter testing schemes on this one. And as I said, I'm missing the front page for the other one. But you can go through here. There's a couple of 424 squadron options. Tactical Fighter Flight in Rivers, Manitoba, experimental test. 420 Squadron based out of London, Ontario, as well as 402 Winnipeg Squadron in a couple of different schemes. So that gives you, what, 1, 2, 3 different squadrons plus a couple of testing units, and this one gives you 3 different squadrons as well as a testing unit. So all told, you have a large number of different marking options. So my plan was to build half a P-51. So I wanted to take a P-51, only build sort of half, and mount it flush onto like a plaque and hang it on a wall. So, you know, you take your P-51, you take your wooden plaque, you mount your P-51 fuselage onto the plaque, and you have your wing sticking out the side. And then you can mark this up, and then your other half of the fuselage can go on another plaque in different markings. So for every model P-51, you get 2 possible schemes. I could, you know, put them together and paint one half one way and one half the other, but you can only ever see one side. So mounting them on a plaque, 2 separate plaques, gives you, you know, say you point them, build them, and you hang them up nose to nose on your wall, 2 different plaques, 2 different paint schemes, showing off Canadian units. The issue is the rudders. Many of the more modern moldings and more detailed kits, you either have the rudder as a separate piece, so you gotta slice the rudder down the middle, or you'll see it where it gets built and molded, the rudder is molded into one side of the fuselage, and the other side of the fuselage is just a fin, and the seam runs along the rudder hinge point. So I'd have to try to again slice that rudder half off to have 2 half fuselages. And there's not a lot of moldings out there that include the rudders on each half of the fuselage. And this is one of the few that do. So for $10 to get exactly what I need, this is the key kind of kit I need. So then what I need to do is go down the line. You know, I need to slice the lower wing in half. I need to go through and slice, you know, some of the instrument panels, the propeller hub, all that kind of stuff's got to be cut down the middle. I don't know if it's normal, but I actually have 2 canopies included, which is good, because if I try to cut one down the middle and I ruin it, I still have another one to work with. I can also always buy a vacuum form canopy and cut a vacuum form canopy down the middle, and it gives me the 2 halves. They're a little like thin plastic, vacuum formed over a wooden block, so you tend to get a thin, easily cut plastic. And so we'll see. The detail isn't the greatest. It comes with raised paneling on the wings. Big, massive. This is what I'm talking about when I say fist size rivets. If you actually zoom in and you look at the size of the rivets on this thing, you know, if you scaled that up to real life, you would literally be looking at a rivet the size of my fist. So the detail isn't here, but I mean, I'll sand that off. I'll rescribe a little bit of the detail I need to rescribe to make it look good. I'll paint it up, you know, and in the end, it'll look decent. This also brings back a ton of memories. This is one of the first models I can remember building myself, you know, like really building and doing it well and being happy with the results. I wasn't like a 5 or 6 year old putting a model together. I probably built these when I was in, oh man, I would like to say probably like grade 6 or grade 7. I remember building this kit. I did it up with the green, the Millie P was the name of the aircraft I did it up as. And I remember building this as a kid and being so happy with it and hanging it from the ceiling in my bedroom and just being over the moon that it turned out so well. So getting to go back and build this one again, now that I look at it and I realize it looks not much better than, say, like a children's toy, it's pretty, you know, amazing to think back at how cool I thought it was as a kid. But bit of nostalgia. It'll be nice to get these built, get them mounted on plaques, see my vision come forward. If it works out well, I want to try to get a bunch more of these. Hopefully I can find them around, and I'll do up a big, I don't know where I'm going to hang it. I might have to take it and hang it at work, or, you know, find maybe at a local hobby shop or something, see if they want to put it up on display, because I don't really have space in the house for it. Not right now anyways, but it hangs on a wall, so it doesn't take that much space. So that's that. The 4 kits I finished. 4 kits I finished. 4 kits I'm going to start, and the 2 new kits that I bought, and that's where we are. So, in a snap of the fingers, it'll be 2 weeks in the future, and you will get to see where those German aircraft are. So, let's go to the future. Okay, here we are back, roughly 2 weeks in the future from the last video. So, we're about an hour long at this point, so I'm going to keep this section a little quick, try to keep this video under an hour. I didn't expect it to be as long as it did, so I'm going to quickly, we'll get the camera swapped over, quickly go over the current status of these 4 kits, and we'll wrap this up. So, here we go. Focke-Wulf 190A. As you can see, I've got the fuselage painted up. The wheel wells have the lighter color gray painted. And if I just quickly go through my parts bag here, cockpit's painted. The darker color gray for the cockpit. So the cockpit's painted, wheel wells painted, landing gears are painted. The inside of the cowling's painted. I got the props painted the dark green color that they would be. The spinner's been painted black. So I got a lot of the base coats down on this thing. So I'm getting ready to start to do some weathering and some details. Basically they're all at the same point. So you can see with the Focke-Wulf door in 9, the gray in the fuselage has been painted. You got the landing gears here. They got some of the lighter gray paint on them. Same thing in here for the the prop is painted up, the spinner, wheels, landing gear bays, the cockpit has the darker color gray on it, the inside of the cowl flaps and the inside of the cowling has been painted in the right color, so that's been moving right along. The TA-152, I've got the lighter gray in the engine bay, the darker gray of the cockpit, so it's all done up. The cockpit, the wheel wells, again, same as the other one, cowl flaps, props, all the bits and pieces. The bits and pieces for the engine have been painted. You can see the main block of the engine itself here's got the aluminum color painted on it. It's all set to go now for weathering. And moving on to the HE-162. Again, you've got the darker gray for the cockpit and the lighter gray here in the nose, as well as the lighter gray in the main bays. That's all painted up. Your cockpit bits are painted in the darker gray. There's the seat, there's the control stick and your instrument panel. So everything's got the darker gray. The main landing gear bay with the landing gears already the gear installed itself, painted the lighter gray. The wheels are done. All the little bits for the landing gear doors and stuff. This one's a little special. It actually has a metallizer paint, alclad aluminum, so it's a metal flake paint. It looks very realistic for metal when it's completed. So I got that done. And the engine core, as I said, the engine will be exposed. So you've got the engine itself here painted up with aluminum flat black. And if you can tell with the difference here in the video, the intake here is painted with the metallizer paint, and this is just painted with regular aluminum. So you can kind of see, one looks a little bit more real metal than the aluminum paint does. So it gives off a bit of a contrast between colors in the video. So that's where we currently stand. All the base colors are painted. All the cockpits, all the fuselages, all of the wheel wells, the landing gears, the base colors are down. My next step is going to be some detail painting, some weathering, and starting to assemble these bad boys. So we'll see where that goes. So as you can see, I got a good base start on these kits. Considering it's been 30 days since the last update, it's a little longer than I hoped. Hopefully it's not been too long for you guys. I have some more content in the works. I have a couple of tips and tricks videos that I've been recording. So it's going to be some sort of how-to videos on some of the model building stuff. I've got basic airbrush usage, paint application. I've got one for the metallizer, the alclad metallizer application, how to do that properly, sort of how I do it. I'm not going to say it's properly, but it works for me. So how I do that. I'm going to do some on some weathering techniques, some basic sort of cockpit and landing gear weathering, how to highlight and shadows and darken and make some of that detail pop out. So I'm going to have a video on that, and then I'll do some video on masking, canopy masking, more camouflage masking, stuff like that. And so yeah, that stuff I'll try. Once I get some of those how-to videos done, I'll try to release those kind of in the middle of the month So you'll have you know, an update. 2 weeks later, you know, a tips and tricks, and then an update, then a tips and tricks, and try to space this out, get some more content going on. As well, I've been recording the building progress of these 4 kits, and I'm putting it together as a, there'll be a time-lapse build, so you'll actually be able to watch the whole kit build from start to finish in a time-lapse video, interjected with a little bit of comments here and there. So I got that stuff recording. So once the 4 kits are completed, I'll release those time-lapse videos kind of spaced out a little bit, not so they're all just dumped at once, but maybe once a week or so, space them in between all the other builds and how-tos and whatnot. And then now that we're getting, you know, by that should get me through into the summer, and hopefully by then I'll have some more air show and warbird videos for you guys, get out and do some of that stuff. So we'll see where we end up. And yeah, so I also have, I do have a new decal sheet that showed up. But as I said, this video is already too long, so I'll go over that next month video. So stay tuned for that. This was another one of the, as I mentioned, with the trades with ARC in the previous segment. I got this through a trade, so we'll go over that on the next month's update. So as always, if you guys have any questions or comments, comment down below, ask away. I'll do my best to answer any questions. And otherwise, I do apologize. It's going to be probably, as I said, another month or so to the next video. But hopefully this hour-long video can tie you through till then. And stay tuned. I will have more for you guys in the future. See you later.
Thank you for watching, guys. And as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.seans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.